Jake Morrison sat in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, watching alien faces twisted with fear. 3,000 years had passed since the galaxy last knew war. Now it was back, and nobody remembered how to fight. The Zephyrian Empire had started 6 months ago. They swept across the outer rim like a plague, taking world after world. The Altarians, with their beautiful crystal cities, had surrendered without firing a shot. The Centaurians, who spent centuries debating the color of their morning tea, couldn't agree on basic defense plans. Even the Draknari, who looked like dragons and talked tough, were hiding behind their fortress walls. Morrison watched them argue and panic. As Earth's ambassador, he was supposed to offer diplomatic solutions. But diplomacy only worked when both sides wanted peace. The Zephyrians wanted everything. Captain Lisa Carter stood behind Morrison's chair, her hand resting on her weapon. She had trained for 20 years in Earth's Peace Corps, learning how to solve problems without violence. But she had also studied the old files, the ones locked away in Earth's deepest vaults. She knew what humans used to be. The Zephyrians have taken 40 worlds, said Ambassador Veltar of the Altarians. His blue skin had turned pale with worry. They don't negotiate, they don't bargain, they just take. Perhaps we could offer them tribute, suggested Counselor Zephyron from Centauri Prime. Surely they must want something we can give peacefully. Morrison almost laughed. These species had lived in peace for so long they had forgotten what predators looked like. The Zephyrians weren't interested in tribute. They were interested in conquest, pure and simple. What about the Draknari fleet? Asked another voice. You have the largest military in the galaxy. War Chief Grath of the Draknari spoke up, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. Our ships are for show. Our weapons are for ceremony. We have not fought a real war in 2,000 years. Our soldiers know parade formations, not battle tactics. The hall fell silent. The galaxy's strongest military force had just admitted they were useless. Morrison felt Carter shift behind him. He could sense her growing frustration. She had read the same classified reports he had. Earth's military history made every other species look like children playing with toy soldiers. What about evacuation? Someone suggested. We could move our populations to the inner systems. And give up half the galaxy? Morrison asked quietly. Let the Zephyrians have everything beyond the core worlds? It's better than war, replied Veltar. War is chaos. War is destruction. We have moved beyond such primitive solutions. Morrison stood up slowly. The hall grew quiet as all eyes turned to the human representative. Earth was the newest member of the Galactic Council, accepted only 800 years ago after proving they had given up their violent past. Most species still saw humans as former barbarians who had learned to behave. You're right, Morrison said. War is chaos. War is destruction. War is the failure of civilization. He paused, looking around the room at dozens of alien faces. But sometimes, war is also necessary. A murmur ran through the assembly. Several species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Zephyrians understand only one language, Morrison continued. They respect only one argument. Until someone speaks that language, they will keep taking worlds. They will keep killing innocent people. They will keep destroying everything you have built. Are you suggesting we fight them? Asked Counselor Zephyron, sounding shocked. Humanity swore an oath of peace when you joined this council. You promised to never again walk the path of war. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Behind him, Carter's breathing had changed slightly. She was thinking the same thing he was thinking. Perhaps, Morrison said carefully, it's time we remembered what we used to be. The words sent a chill through the assembly. Several alien delegates stood up and began talking at once. Some demanded explanations. Others called for Morrison to be censured. A few quietly asked what he meant. Morrison raised his hand for silence. When the hall quieted, he spoke again. For 3,000 years, humanity has chosen peace. We chose to build instead of destroy. We chose to create instead of conquer. We turned our weapons into tools and our soldiers into farmers. We did this because we wanted to be better than what we were. He walked to the center of the hall, where a holographic display showed the galaxy. Red dots marked Zephyrian conquests, spreading like an infection across the outer rim. But we never forgot what we were, Morrison said. We just chose not to be it anymore. The choice was always ours to make. Carter stepped forward and handed Morrison a small device. He activated it, and the hologram changed. Now it showed Earth, blue and green and peaceful, with vast cities and orbital gardens. Deep beneath Earth's surface, Morrison said. In vaults sealed for 3 millennia, we keep the records of what we used to be. Battle plans that conquered continents. Weapons that could crack planets. Strategies that brought empires to their knees. We kept them not because we wanted to use them again, but because we never wanted to forget the price of peace. The hall was completely silent now. Even the Draknari looked nervous. The Zephyrians think the galaxy is soft, Morrison continued. They think 3,000 years of peace has made us weak. They think we have forgotten how to fight. They're wrong about the fighting part. He deactivated the hologram and looked around the room one more time. I'm returning to Earth to make a recommendation to my government. The Galactic Council has tried diplomacy, tribute, and surrender. None of those options will stop the Zephyrians. There's one option left. Morrison turned and walked toward the exit, Carter beside him. At the doorway, he stopped and looked back. Pray that we choose not to use it, he said. Because if we do, the galaxy will remember why humans spent 3,000 years learning to be peaceful. As they left the assembly hall, Carter finally spoke. Do you think they understand what you just told them? Morrison considered the question as they walked to their ship. No, he said finally. But they will. Admiral Roy Jackson stood before the massive vault door buried 3 miles beneath Earth's surface. The metal was black as space and covered with warnings in a dozen dead languages. For 3,000 years, this door had remained sealed. Today, that would change. Dr. Nina Walsh typed the first password into the ancient console. Her hands shook slightly as the symbols appeared on the screen. She was one of only 12 humans alive who knew all the codes. The responsibility had been passed down through secret families for 30 centuries. Are you sure about this? Nina asked. Once we open this vault, we can't pretend we never looked inside. Jackson nodded grimly. The Zephyrians took another 3 worlds yesterday. The Galactic Council is still debating whether to send them a strongly worded letter. We're past the point of pretending. Nina entered the second password, then the third. Ancient security systems hummed to life, scanning her DNA, reading her brainwaves, checking her voice patterns. The vault had been designed to keep humanity's darkest secrets locked away forever. Only a global emergency could justify opening. The massive door began to move, sliding into the wall with a sound like thunder. Cool air rushed out, carrying the smell of old metal and forgotten memories. Inside, rows of data storage devices stretched into the darkness, containing the complete military history of humanity's violent past. Jackson walked inside and activated the first terminal. Files began streaming across the screen faster than he could read them. Battle plans from the resource wars, weapon designs from the colonial conflicts, strategic analyses from the Great Consolidation, 300,000 years of human warfare preserved in perfect detail. My God, Nina whispered, reading over his shoulder. How did we ever learn to be peaceful? We got tired of being so good at war, Jackson replied. Meanwhile, in the orbital monitoring station above Earth, Dr. Carl Stewart noticed something strange. The global brainwave patterns were changing. Subtle shifts in the collective human consciousness were appearing on his instruments. It was as if something long dormant was waking up. Carl pulled up the historical data and compared it to current readings. The patterns matched records from ancient conflicts when humanity's warrior instincts were fully active. But that was impossible. Modern humans were peaceful. They had been for millennia. Computer, run a full analysis of global neural patterns, Carl commanded. Analysis complete, the artificial intelligence replied. Current patterns show 73% similarity to pre-peace era military activation states. Estimated time to full activation, 72 hours. Carl stared at the results, Whatever was happening, it was happening fast. On Luna Base, Commander Alex Turner addressed the first volunteers for humanity's new military force. They had answered the call within hours of the announcement, leaving comfortable lives to become soldiers in a war most people still hope to avoid. "I won't lie to you," Turner said, looking at the assembled men and women. "None of us have ever fought in a real war. Our training manuals are 3,000 years old. Our weapons are improvised from mining equipment. By every logical measure, we should be helpless against an enemy with 3 centuries of combat experience." He paused, studying their faces. They didn't look worried. If anything, they looked eager. "But logic has never been humanity's strongest point," Turner continued. "We're the species that climbed out of caves and decided to conquer the stars. We're the ones who looked at impossible odds and said, 'Challenge accepted.' The Zephyrians are about to learn what that means." The crowd cheered, and Turner felt something stir in his chest. It was an old feeling, passed down through genetic memory from ancestors who had fought with spears and stones. The thrill of the hunt, the joy of the challenge, the pure excitement of testing yourself against a worthy enemy. Captain Kelly Brooks stood on the bridge of the ship formerly known as Peaceful Journey. The mining vessel was being converted into humanity's first warship in 3 millennia. Engineers swarmed over every surface, installing weapons, armor, and tactical systems. "How long until the particle cannon is online?" Kelly asked her chief. "Engineer. 6 hours, Captain. Maybe less if the boys in engineering keep working like this." Kelly nodded. The speed of the conversion was remarkable. The engineers seemed to instinctively know how to turn peaceful tools into weapons of war. It was as if they had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. "Captain," her tactical officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Zephyrian space. They want to know why we're militarizing our ships." Kelly smiled. It was not a peaceful expression. "Send them a message," she said. "Tell them we're redecorating." On Earth, General Pete Davis watched the first combat training exercises. Raw recruits who had never held a weapon were moving through tactical scenarios with frightening efficiency. They absorbed lessons that should take months in a matter of days. They developed instincts that military academies spent years trying to teach. Dr. Maya Foster, the military psychologist assigned to study the phenomenon, approached Davis with her preliminary report. "General, I think you need to see this," she said, handing him a data pad. "The psychological profiles of our new soldiers are unlike anything in the literature. They're not learning to fight, they're remembering how to fight." Davis read the report, his expression growing more serious with each page. "Are you saying this knowledge was already in them?" he asked. "I'm saying it's in all of us," Maya replied. "Humans spent 200,000 years as persistence predators. We hunted mammoths across continents. We fought wars with stone axes and bronze swords. We conquered an entire planet before we ever saw the stars. That doesn't just disappear because we decide to be peaceful." Davis looked out at the training grounds where soldiers practiced maneuvers their great-grandparents had never seen. "So what you're telling me is that we've been suppressing our natural instincts for 3,000 years. And now we're not," Maya confirmed. That evening, Admiral Jackson broadcast a message to every human settlement in the galaxy. His words were carried to mining colonies, research stations, and peaceful farming worlds scattered across 1,000 star systems. "Fellow humans," he began. "For 3,000 years we have chosen peace. We chose to build instead of destroy, to create instead of conquer. We made this choice because we could, because we were strong enough to be gentle, powerful enough to be kind." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Today that choice has been taken from us. An enemy threatens everything we have built. They believe our peace makes us weak. They believe our kindness makes us soft. They believe 3,000 years of civilization has made us forget what we truly are." Jackson's expression hardened. "They're about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war. We didn't forget how to fight. We just chose not to. That choice has now been made for us." The transmission ended, but its effects were felt across human space. On distant worlds, farmers put down their plows and picked up weapons. In orbital laboratories, scientists began calculating missile trajectories instead of stellar orbits. In peaceful gardens, children played war games with a seriousness that would have terrified their parents just days before. The sleeping giant was waking up, and when it opened its eyes, it was smiling. Captain Emma Lewis watched the Zephyrian fleet through her bridge windows. 12 massive warships hung in space around the planet Kepler 442, stripping away resources while the peaceful Altarian colonists hid in underground shelters. The enemy had been doing this for weeks, growing fat and lazy on easy victories. "Captain, they're hailing us," reported her communications officer. "The Zephyrian commander wants to know our business here." Emma smiled. Her ship, the Defiance, was humanity's first warship to see combat in 3,000 years. She had been a cargo hauler just 2 months ago. Now she bristled with weapons that should not have existed and carried soldiers who should not have known how to fight. "Tell them we're here to discuss their departure," Emma said. The Zephyrian fleet commander appeared on the main screen. War leader Krextal looked like most of his species, tall, gray-skinned, with 4 arms and cold black eyes. He had conquered 15 worlds and never lost a battle. "You are 1 ship," Krextal said with amusement. "We are 12. Leave now, or we will add your wreckage to our trophy collection." "Counteroffer," Emma replied. "You leave now, or we add your wreckage to our training exercises." Krextal laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. "Humans, the galaxy's pet gardeners, want to play soldier. This should be entertaining." The transmission ended, and Emma turned to her tactical officer. "Lieutenant Chen, are all weapons ready?" "Yes, Captain. Particle cannons charged, missile tubes loaded, point defense systems online." "Good. Remember, we want to disable their flagship. Last, I want Krextal to watch what happens to his fleet before his turn comes." The battle began when the Zephyrians opened fire, expecting to vaporize the single human ship with their first volley. The Defiance vanished instead, activating a stealth system the Zephyrians had never encountered. One moment the human ship was there, the next it was gone from all sensors. "Where did they go?" Krextal demanded from his bridge. The answer came in the form of explosions across his fleet. The Defiance appeared behind the rear guard, fired a devastating barrage, then vanished again before return fire could reach it. 3 Zephyrian ships were crippled in the first 30 seconds. "All ships, spread formation," Krextal ordered. "Find that ship." But the humans were fighting a war the Zephyrians had never seen. While other species fought with honor and tradition, humans had spent 200,000 years learning to kill efficiently. They used stealth, deception, and tactics that their enemies could not understand. The Defiance appeared above the fleet, dropping mines that exploded like fireworks. It materialized beside a destroyer, fired at point-blank range, then jumped away before the enemy could react. Each attack was perfectly timed, perfectly placed, and utterly ruthless. "Captain," reported Emma's weapons officer, "Enemy Ship 4 is trying to surrender." "Not accepting surrenders during combat," Emma replied calmly. "We can discuss terms when they're all disabled." By the 10-minute mark, 8 Zephyrian ships were drifting wrecks. The remaining 4 tried to form a defensive formation, but the Defiance cut through them like a knife through paper. Emma's crew worked with mechanical precision, targeting engines first, then weapons, then life support. They wanted the enemy alive but helpless. At 17 minutes, only Krextal's flagship remained functional. The Defiance decloaked directly. In front of it, weapons trained on the bridge. "War Leader Krextal," Emma said over the comm. "You wanted to discuss our departure. I believe you were saying something about wreckage and trophies." Krextal stared at the human ship in disbelief. His entire fleet had been destroyed by a single vessel that shouldn't have been able to fight at all. "Surrender your ship," Emma continued, "and we'll provide medical aid to your wounded. Refuse and we'll test our new boarding tactics on your hull." The Zephyrian flagship surrendered without firing another shot. News of the victory spread across the galaxy in hours. The impossible had happened. Humans had not just won their first battle, they had annihilated a superior enemy force without taking significant damage. Galactic Council members reacted with shock, relief, and growing concern. On the planet's surface, Colonel Ben Rodriguez led the rescue operation for the Altarian colonists. His Marines moved through the Zephyrian ground installations like ghosts, using techniques the enemy had never encountered. They struck from shadows, disappeared through ventilation shafts, and appeared where they were least expected. "Sir, the Zephyrians are requesting parley," reported Sergeant Williams. "Tell them to surrender their weapons and gather in the main courtyard," Rodriguez replied. "Any resistance will be met with maximum force." The ground campaign lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 200 Zephyrian soldiers had been captured without a single human casualty. The enemy simply could not adapt to human tactics fast enough to mount effective resistance. Dr. Sam Pierce, embedded as a war correspondent, documented something that disturbed him about human soldiers in combat. They didn't fight with desperate fury like other species he had observed. They didn't charge with noble determination or defensive rage. They fought with calm, methodical precision, and something that chilled him to his core. They smiled. In the heat of battle, facing death and dealing death, the humans smiled, not with cruelty or madness, but with genuine enjoyment. They were having fun. "Sergeant Martinez," Sam asked during a break in the fighting, "why are you smiling?" The Marine looked confused by the question. "Sir, we're good at this. Really good. Why wouldn't I smile?" The Zephyrian response to the defeat was swift and brutal. Supreme War Leader Vexithara, the Empire's greatest military mind, assembled a massive fleet to crush the upstart humans. She would make an example of them that would terrify the galaxy into submission. Her target was New Geneva, a peaceful human colony world with minimal defenses. The attack began at dawn with orbital bombardment designed to break the colonists' spirit. Vexithara expected quick surrender followed by public executions. By sunset, her flagship was drifting debris, and 90% of her fleet was destroyed. Lieutenant Grace Murphy piloted one of humanity's new Reaper-class fighters during the battle. She had been a civilian pilot 6 months ago, flying cargo between asteroid mines. Now she danced through enemy formations like death incarnate, her fighter's weapons finding targets with supernatural accuracy. "New Geneva Control, this is Reaper 7, Grace reported, her voice steady and cheerful. "Enemy flagship neutralized. Remaining hostiles are scattering toward the jump point, requesting permission to pursue. I think I can catch them before they escape the system." "Permission granted, Reaper 7. Try to leave a few alive to carry word back to their commanders." "Copy that, Control. I'll try to contain my enthusiasm." Grace's fighter accelerated toward the fleeing enemy ships, and anyone listening to her comm chatter would have heard something that would haunt their dreams. She was humming, a happy little tune, like someone enjoying a pleasant afternoon drive. Supreme War Leader Vexithara watched from her escape pod as human fighters systematically destroyed what remained of her fleet. Each kill was precise, professional, and apparently enjoyable for the pilots. She had commanded Zephyrian forces for 40 years and conquered dozens of worlds. She had never seen anything like this. The humans weren't fighting to survive or defend their territory. They were hunting, and they were very, very good at it. As rescue ships arrived to collect Zephyrian survivors, Admiral Jackson received them, battle reports at Earth Command. Human losses were minimal. Enemy losses were catastrophic. The engagement had lasted 6 hours from start to finish. "Sir," his aide reported, "Galactic news networks are calling it a miracle. They want to know how we became so effective so quickly." Jackson reviewed the tactical analysis one more time, then looked up at the young officer. "We didn't become effective," he said quietly. "We just stopped holding back." The galaxy was beginning to understand that they had awakened something ancient and terrible. The humans weren't learning to fight, they were remembering, and their memory was very, very long. 6 months into the war, the galaxy watched in growing horror as human forces swept through Zephyrian space like a plague. What had started as defensive actions had become something else entirely. The humans weren't just fighting back anymore, they were hunting. Captain Tony Clark commanded the deep reconnaissance ship Shadow Walker, operating far behind enemy lines in the heart of Zephyrian territory. His mission reports read more like hunting journals than military intelligence, filled with detailed observations about enemy patrol patterns, supply routes, and weak points. "Day 47 in enemy space," Tony recorded in his log. "Located another supply depot on the moon of Xerion 4. Standard Zephyrian design, Minimal guards, perfect for our purposes. The crew is getting restless. We've been watching targets for 2 weeks without engaging. I think Peterson is starting to take it personally. The Shadow Walker had been stalking Zephyrian forces for over a month, appearing just long enough to gather intelligence before vanishing into the void. The enemy knew something was out there, but they couldn't find it, couldn't track it, couldn't predict where it would appear next. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Kim Foster, the ship's tactical officer, "we've identified 17 high-value targets in this sector alone. When do we start the hunt?" Tony smiled at the eagerness in her voice. 6 months ago, Kim had been teaching children on a peaceful farming colony. Now she spoke of warfare like it was her favorite hobby. "Patience," Tony replied. "Good hunters wait for the perfect moment. We want them all in one place before we begin." Meanwhile, on the Zephyrian fortress world of Kronos Prime, Commander Jake Sullivan prepared for the most ambitious assault in human military history. The planet had never fallen to enemy attack. Its defenses had broken 12 different invasions over the past century, each time turning would-be conquerors into cautionary tales. Sullivan's approach was typically human in its audacity. Instead of attacking the strongest points, he planned to ignore them entirely. While the enemy focused on their impressive walls and massive cannons, his forces would strike where they were weakest, from below. "Remember," Sullivan addressed his assault teams, "we're not here to prove how brave we are, we're here to win. Bravery is for species that aren't smart enough to cheat." The assault began at midnight with 1,000 human soldiers dropping from orbit in stealth pods. But these weren't aimed at the fortress walls. They landed in the wilderness 50 miles away, where ancient mining tunnels connected to the planet's underground water system. While Zephyrian sensors watched the sky for incoming fleets, human engineers were already beneath their feet, moving through forgotten passages with the patience of professional hunters. They carried enough explosives to crack a moon, but their real weapons were time and silence. "Phase 1 complete," Sullivan reported 12 hours later. "All teams in position. The fortress is surrounded, but they don't know it yet." Dr. Amy Foster published her psychological study of human warriors while the siege of Kronos Prime was still underway. Her research had been conducted over months of observing human soldiers in combat, and her conclusions shook the scientific community to its core. "Humans don't just possess the capacity for violence," she wrote. "They are evolutionarily optimized for it. Every aspect of their physiology, psychology, and social structure exists to make them more effective predators." The study revealed disturbing details that other species had never noticed. Human persistence hunting allowed them to track prey across entire star systems, never giving up, never stopping, always following. Their pack coordination enabled fleet actions of unprecedented complexity, with hundreds of ships moving as one organism. Their pattern recognition helped them predict enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. Most unsettling of all was their capacity for emotional detachment during combat. Where other species fought with passion or desperation, humans could switch off their emotions entirely, becoming cold, calculating machines focused solely on victory. "They don't fight angry," Dr. Foster noted. "They fight happy." This suggests that violence is not an aberration for humans, but a natural state they actively enjoy returning to. The siege of Kronos Prime ended 72 hours after it began. The fortress that had withstood centuries of conventional assault fell to human tactics that the defenders simply could not comprehend. Sullivan's forces emerged from underground tunnels throughout the complex, appearing in places that should have been impossible to reach. The Zephyrian garrison surrendered, not because they were beaten but because they were terrified. The humans had infiltrated every level of their supposedly impregnable fortress without triggering a single alarm. They could have killed everyone in their sleep, but instead chose to demonstrate their complete dominance by taking prisoners. During the victory celebration, alien war correspondents noticed something that would haunt their reports for years. The humans were laughing, not with relief or gratitude, but with genuine amusement. They found the whole operation entertaining, like it had been an elaborate game rather than a life-or-death struggle. "Sergeant Collins," one reporter asked a human Marine, How do you feel about conquering an unconquerable fortress? The Marine grinned. Honestly, kind of disappointed it wasn't harder. We were expecting more of a challenge. Supreme War Leader Vexithara, desperate to understand her enemy, ordered the capture of a human prisoner. The operation took 3 attempts and cost her an entire battalion, but finally succeeded in taking Sergeant Dan Murphy of the 7th Terran Marines. Under interrogation, Murphy explained humanity's philosophy with chilling casualness. He sat in his cell like he was having coffee with friends, completely relaxed despite being a prisoner of war. "You want to understand us?" Murphy asked. "Sure, I can explain. You guys fight wars to win territory or resources or revenge. That's business. We fight wars to see who's better at war. The territory is just how we keep score." Vexithara stared at him in disbelief. "You enjoy this. You actually enjoy killing." "Killing's just a tool," Murphy replied. "What we enjoy is winning, being the best, proving that we're better hunters than our prey. Your people are decent fighters, but you're not predators. There's a difference." "What difference?" Murphy's smile was genuinely friendly, which somehow made it more terrifying. "Predators never stop hunting. You fight until you get what you want, then you go home. We fight until there's nothing left to fight. It's not personal. It's just what we are." As Vexithara processed this information, reports arrived from across her empire. Human strike forces were appearing everywhere at once, hitting targets that should have been impossible to reach. They used intelligence networks that seemed to span the galaxy, coordinating attacks with precision that defied explanation. The humans weren't just fighting a war, they were orchestrating one. Every battle was part of a larger pattern, every victory building toward some ultimate goal that only they could see. They fought like they had been planning this campaign for centuries, not months. "How?" Vexithara demanded. "How are you everywhere at once?" Murphy shrugged. "We're really good at sharing information, and we've had 3,000 years to think about this. Did you really expect us to waste all that time growing flowers?" The truth was becoming clear to anyone willing to see it. The humans had never stopped being warriors. They had just pretended to be gardeners while they perfected the art of war in their minds. Every peaceful year had been spent thinking, planning, and preparing for the day they might need to fight again. And now that day had come. The galaxy's sleeping giants were awake and they were hungry for the hunt. The Zephyrians were discovering what ancient Earth prey had learned millions of years ago. When humans started hunting you, they never stopped. The war was no longer about territory or resources. It had become a demonstration of what happened when you woke up a species that had spent 200,000 years becoming the perfect predators. And the humans were just getting started. General Kate Williams stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the blue-green planet of Zeph Prime turning slowly below. The Zephyrian homeworld was beautiful, with vast cities of crystal and metal that gleamed in the light of their twin suns. It was also completely surrounded by human warships. The siege had lasted 3 weeks, but Kate had not fired a single shot at the planet. She didn't need to. The message was clear enough. The Zephyrians were trapped, outmatched, and surrounded by predators who had all the time in the world. "General," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving another surrender offer from the surface. They're willing to give up half their territory if we withdraw." Kate smiled without taking her eyes off the planet. "Send the same reply we've been sending. We can wait." The psychological warfare that followed was masterful in its simplicity. Human ships patrolled the system in perfect formation, never aggressive, never threatening, just present. They broadcasted peaceful music on all frequencies. They sent down care packages for civilian populations. They acted like polite guests who had simply decided to stay forever. The effect on Zephyrian morale was devastating. Their military leaders knew they were facing an enemy that could destroy their planet whenever it chose to. But the humans just waited, patient as death itself, smiling their terrifying smiles. Supreme War Leader Vexithara made one final desperate attempt to break the siege. She gathered every remaining Zephyrian warship in the Empire, nearly 200, vessels representing the last hope of her species. If she could punch through the human blockade even briefly, it might inspire other worlds to resist. The battle lasted 23 minutes. Captain Chris Walker commanded the human flagship Inevitable. During the engagement, he had been expecting this final assault for weeks, and his fleet was perfectly positioned to meet it. The Zephyrian ships came at them with desperate courage, fighting like cornered animals. It didn't matter. The humans dismantled the enemy fleet, with surgical precision disabling ships rather than destroying them. They wanted survivors, not martyrs. When the shooting stopped, only one Zephyrian vessel remained functional, Vexthara's command ship, left drifting and powerless as a deliberate message. Supreme War Leader Vexthara, Chris said over the communications channel, "This is Captain Walker of the human fleet. We're transmitting coordinates for safe passage back to your homeworld. Please deliver our terms to your government." Vexthara stared at the human captain on her screen. Her entire military was destroyed, her empire in ruins, and this human was offering her safe passage home. The gesture was more humiliating than any torture could have been. "Why?" she asked. "Why not just finish it?" Chris looked genuinely puzzled by the question. "Because the war is over. You lost. There's no point in being cruel about it." The unconditional surrender came 6 hours after Vexthara's ship reached the surface. What surprised the galaxy even more than humanity's military prowess was what happened next. The peace negotiations were held on neutral Altarian space, and the human delegation was led not by Admiral Jackson or General Williams, but by Ambassador Jake Morrison, the same diplomat who had first warned the Galactic Council about humanity's capabilities. On behalf of the human species, Morrison began, "I want to formally apologize to this council for our enthusiasm during the recent conflict. We may have gotten a bit carried away." The Altarian mediator looked confused. "Ambassador Morrison, your species just won the most decisive military victory in galactic history. Why are you apologizing?" "Because we forgot ourselves," Morrison replied seriously. "For a brief time, we remembered what we used to be instead of what we chose to become. We regret any unnecessary suffering this may have caused." The terms humanity offered shocked everyone present. Zephyrian conquered worlds would be returned to their original inhabitants immediately. The Zephyrian military would be disbanded but not destroyed. Former soldiers would be retrained for peaceful occupations. War criminals would face justice but through fair trials, not summary execution. There were no territorial demands. No tribute requirements. No humiliating conditions. The humans asked for nothing except a promise that the Zephyrians would never again wage aggressive war. "I don't understand," said the Centaurian observer. "You could demand anything. Why are you being so merciful?" Morrison considered the question carefully. "Because mercy is what separates us from what we used to be. We chose to be better than our nature. That choice doesn't stop being important just because we won a war." Dr. Rachel Stone, studying post-war human psychology from her research station, made a remarkable discovery. The moment the surrender was signed, human military efficiency began declining rapidly. Soldiers started making rookie mistakes. Officers lost their tactical edge. The entire war machine that had functioned with supernatural precision for 2 years began falling apart. It was as if someone had flipped a switch in the human brain, turning off their warrior instincts as quickly as they had been activated. "It's extraordinary," Rachel reported to the scientific community. "Human brain patterns are returning to pre-war configurations. Combat effectiveness is dropping by 10% each day. They're literally forgetting how to fight." Admiral Jackson explained the phenomenon in his final military report. "War was never our natural state. It was our emergency protocol. For 200,000 years, humans fought when they had to, then returned to peace when they could. We didn't change our nature. We just activated it temporarily. Within 6 months, human military forces were completely demobilized. The weapons were decommissioned and stored away. The warships were retrofitted for exploration and research. The sealed archives were locked once more, their passwords given to a new generation of guardians. Captain Lisa Carter, who had witnessed that first fateful Galactic Council meeting, now commanded a scientific expedition studying neutron star formation. Her ship was unarmed except for basic defense systems. Her crew consisted of biologists, physicists, and philosophers. "Do you miss it?" her science officer asked one day. "The war, I mean. You were good at it." Lisa thought about the question while watching a distant star collapse into exotic matter. "I was good at it because I had to be. But I'm happier growing flowers than burning worlds. Most humans are." On a trade vessel crossing the galaxy, former enemies worked side by side. Sergeant Dan Murphy, who had once explained human warfare to his Zephyrian captors, now taught mathematics to mixed classes of human and alien children. His students included young Zephyrians whose parents had fought against him. Teacher Murphy, one of his Zephyrian students, asked, "My parents say your people were terrifying in battle, but you seem very kind. How can both things be true?" Murphy smiled as he erased equations from the classroom board. "Because being good at something doesn't mean you have to enjoy doing it. Humans can be very scary when we need to be, but we prefer to be helpful instead." The final scene took place on Earth, in the same vault where Admiral Jackson had first unsealed humanity's military archives. Dr. Nina Walsh sealed the last data storage device and initiated the locking sequence. The massive door closed with a sound like distant thunder, burying humanity's darkest secrets once more. "Do you think we'll ever need to open it again?" asked her assistant. Nina looked at the sealed vault door, with its warnings in ancient languages and its quantum locks that would take a global emergency to bypass. "I hope not," she said quietly. "But if we do, at least the galaxy will know what to expect." Outside, Earth turned peacefully in its orbit, blue and green and beautiful. Children played in gardens built over the foundations of ancient weapons, factories. Artists painted murals celebrating the return of peace. Farmers tended crops that would feed both humans and aliens across the galaxy. In the global archives, the sealed vaults waited in darkness. Their passwords were known to 12 humans, chosen for their wisdom and judgment. The responsibility would be passed down through careful selection, ensuring that humanity's capacity for war would never be completely forgotten, but never again be used lightly. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Peace was not the absence of the capacity for war. It was the choice not to use that capacity. And humanity had proven they were strong enough to make that choice even when victory was within their grasp. The sleeping giants had returned to their slumber, content in the knowledge that the galaxy was safe. But they smiled in their sleep, dreaming of the hunt